You're watching the legal breakdown. So, Glenn, we have some news here about Rudy Giuliani. There is reporting that Giuliani sat for a voluntary interview with Jack Smith. So, first of all, what could this mean? And beyond that, what's the significance of him doing it voluntarily?
Yeah, this is actually pretty big news because it wasn't just a voluntary interview. It was a special kind of interview. It was a proffer session. Now, what is a proffer session? Well, when people like Rudy Giuliani, who is, either the subject of a criminal investigation, which means he may have committed some crimes, and those crimes would fall within the scope of the grand jury investigation, or he may be the target of the investigation. That means somebody the prosecutors intend to indict. For example, we know Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis said Rudy is a target of her criminal probe in Georgia. When people like that, people who've done wrong, committed crimes, have criminal exposure, when prosecutors want to talk with them, want to interview them, they will invite them in for what's called a proffer session. As you can imagine, folks like that, are often not enthusiastic about coming in and talking to prosecutors because they have their own criminal exposure. And ordinarily, when we invite somebody in for a proffer session, it's because we want to know about what their criminal associates might have done. So, for example, what kind of information can Rudy provide about Donald Trump, about Sidney Powell, about Jenna Ellis, and others? So what we do is we invite them in for a proffer session. We give them a letter. We call it Queen for a Day immunity. What does that mean? That means Rudy can come in, understanding he has potential criminal exposure, but he will have the protection of a one-day immunity letter, meaning whatever he says during that interview, during that proffer session, cannot be used against him. The reporting is this was a proffer session. Rudy agreed to come in. He had that limited immunity. That gives the prosecutors, Jack Smith's team, the opportunity to ask Rudy all about what he knows about the crimes of others. And it also allows Rudy to speak openly about his own crimes. And, prosecutors will press somebody to talk about their own crimes. So what this means is that, Jack Smith is potentially, so far up the food chain that he is now attacking or dealing with one of Donald Trump's personal attorneys who was pretty much steeped in, all of Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election.
Yeah, but Glenn, when you get to the top of the food chain where Giuliani is, isn't he himself a big target for Jack Smith? Like, why give him the opportunity to cooperate and basically deprive yourself of a conviction of one of those big fish? Like, not everyone can cooperate. There's got to be some people who can actually get prosecuted, right?
Yeah, so it's always a tough tactical call for prosecutors. Who might you want to do business with? How far up the criminal food chain do you want to go before you stop and simply indict everybody who is above
Right.
the place you stopped? It doesn't surprise me that when the top of the food chain, when the biggest criminal fish is that, big orange blowfish, Donald Trump, that Jack Smith wants to get as high up that ladder as he can and learn everything he can about the crimes of Donald Trump before he makes that, consequential decision of indicting Donald Trump for January 6th. This is probably separate and apart from the documents crimes for which Donald Trump is already federally indicted. But here's the beauty of a proffer session. A proffer session is often that time when Rudy Giuliani and the prosecutors can feel one another out. And I suspect the prosecutors would not just give Rudy a pass. They wouldn't just grant him immunity or say, you know what, we will not prosecute you if you testify truthfully about the crimes of others. This proffer session was probably also Rudy trying to see what the best plea deal with cooperation is that he might be able to secure from the prosecutor. So I don't think we should look at this interview, this proffer session, as some kind of a get out of jail free card. I still fully expect Rudy Giuliani to do one of two things: to either plead guilty with cooperation, or if he chooses not to, he will be a co-defendant in a January 6th indictment, along with Donald Trump and so many others.
So does this make it as close to certain as we can get that there may be some degree of cooperation with Rudy Giuliani?
The fact that Rudy showed up is not a guarantee that he'll cooperate, but boy, it is a big step on the road to cooperation, because once you begin laying out for prosecutors what you know, frankly, about your criminal associates, and kind of by extension or inferentially, you're also sort of admitting that you were part of this criminal scheme together with Trump and Powell and Ellis and others. That really takes him one huge step down the road toward cooperation. But as I say, that cooperation, in my opinion, will have to come with a guilty plea, perhaps to reduce charges, and an agreement to testify truthfully about the crimes of everyone else. And, then Rudy will be able to resolve all of his criminal exposure. And remember, Brian, when we know he's a target in Fani Willis's grand jury investigation down in Georgia, and I suspect what he is hoping is that if he can strike a deal with the federal prosecutors, he will urge them to come in and Bigfoot the Georgia prosecution, the state prosecution, and he'll try to leverage a federal guilty plea with cooperation to try to convince the state prosecutors not to go against him. I don't know that he'll be successful. Frankly, I hope he's not, but I have a feeling that is part of Rudy's calculation by deciding to sit down with federal prosecutors.
Okay, well, stay strong, Fani Willis is my only input here. Glenn, you had mentioned going as far up the food chain as you can until the point where you stop and then you indict everybody above. Who do you think would be above Rudy Giuliani? Like, who do you think prosecutors are looking to indict, regardless of any efforts to cooperate? Who do you think that they want, irrespective of those people's willingness to come in and cooperate?
Yeah, great question. When you drop down one rung on the criminal ladder below Donald Trump, I think that rung is probably occupied by lots of people who are sort of comparably guilty or comparably big
Someone
fish.
like John Eastman, for example.
You took the words right out of my mouth. John Eastman, former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, all of Donald Trump's other lawyers, Powell and Jenna Ellis. Remember, Jenna Ellis and Rudy Giuliani went on that road show down to Georgia, and the reporting was that they misled Georgia state legislators about election fraud. And then somebody who I am keenly interested in seeing held accountable for his crimes, high DOJ official Jeffrey Clark. That's somebody who tried to corrupt and weaponize the Department of Justice, my former professional home, to do Donald Trump's dirty bidding and try to use the Department of Justice to overturn the election's results. So these are people who are all kind of one rung below where Donald Trump is at the top of that criminal ladder. And I have to believe Jack Smith is looking to hold them all accountable. Probably the next rung down would be the Bannons and the Flynns and the Stones and the Alex Jones and characters like that, like the whole Willard War Room cabal.
Yeah, it's more of the grifter crew.
Exactly. They are a bunch of grifters. And Brian, let me just plant this seed, because I have a feeling we're going to be hearing more about it in the near future. I've often raised the possibility that Donald Trump gave out pocket pardons to a whole bunch of his lawyers and his various criminal associates. That was reinforced, at least to me, when I saw Kellyanne Conway write in her book, which no, I did not read, but I did read the New York Times book review of it. She said, you know what, at the end of Donald Trump's presidency, he ambled up to me and he said, and I'm going to quote her now, "Hey, honey, you want a pardon? Blanket pardon? Everybody's going to need one." Now, that was an unsolicited offer of a blanket pardon. Now, Kellyanne Conway, she of Alternative Facts, said, I politely declined Donald Trump's offer for a pardon. I don't know if that's a fact or an alternative fact, but if he offered an unsolicited pardon to Kellyanne Conway, is there anybody who believes he didn't give a pardon to his own dirty attorney,
right,
Rudy Giuliani? So, this could also be an opportunity for Giuliani to sit down with the federal prosecutors and say, let me tell you what I've got in my back pocket. You want to do business with me? I'm going to pull out this pardon. I'll do business with you, but I also want you to kill the Georgia State investigation. So, there's probably a lot of posturing and negotiating going on here, but I very much look forward to the day when people start pulling out these pocket pardons and Jack Smith begins to fight them in court, challenge them in court, and hopefully convince a judge to invalidate every corruptly delivered pardon.
Yeah. Let's finish off with this. Rudy Giuliani isn't exactly what we would consider a credible witness here. The guy is a lunatic, I think is the fair phrasing. Is there a concern in terms of any potential cooperation deal between him and Jack Smith that whatever he gives them might not be credible anyway because of who he is?
There is a huge concern. The first thing I thought of when I saw reporting that he sat down with Jack Smith's team for a proffer session was, I hope they gave him a breathalyzer before the proffer session.
Yeah.
But your point is an excellent one. Sometimes prosecutors don't want to do business with a witness because the witness is so cruddy, is so incredible, has told so many lies that you can't put that witness on the stand and urge a jury to believe them, to credit them when they're testifying about the crimes of others. Frankly, the first question a defense attorney cross-examining Rudy Giuliani, somebody who represents Donald Trump, for example, at trial, would be something like, Mr. Giuliani, you must answer yes or no because you're on cross-examination. Is truth truth? And Rudy's got one of two answers. If he says no, he's just exposed himself as being incredible. If he says, yes, truth is truth, really, let me go to the videotape and play a video of you saying, and I quote, truth isn't truth. How can you polish up a witness like that and make them credible enough to, in good conscience, urge a jury to believe them? Let me tell you, Brian, when I had really cruddy witnesses that I needed to polish up because I really needed their testimony to convict a bigger fish. First of all, I would find all of the external corroboration I could to support their testimony. But here is the challenge for prosecutors. You never want to put somebody on the stand who's so dirty that witness dirties you up by implication, and the jury begins looking sideways at the prosecutor like, what are you trying to pull on us, giving us a guy like Rudy Giuliani and urging us to credit his word? So your point is well taken. Rudy Giuliani will not be the most attractive trial witness.
Yeah. All right. Well, I do have one more question here, and that is, when can we expect to see some answers here with regard to whether or not Giuliani has agreed to cooperate?
I think that is a completely open question. That is up to Jack Smith's timeline. When he decides to begin dropping indictments, I think when we see, for example, if we see a big old conspiracy indictment, what we call a 371 indictment, a conspiracy to commit crimes against or defraud the United States, and a whole bunch of lawyers are in it, Eastman, Jeffrey Clark, Jenna Ellis, Sidney Powell, but there's no Rudy Giuliani, well, that will be a sure sign that Rudy Giuliani has pleaded guilty, accepted responsibility for his crimes, and agreed to cooperate against others.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Obviously, a lot more to come with both Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani now. So if you want to follow along, make sure to subscribe. The links are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.